The psychology of power, how it changes you. The moment before the crown. Every empire begins the same way, with a decision that cannot be undone. A general stands before a river that marks the boundary of law. A young officer grips a crown in a cathedral filled with silence. A ruler signs a decree that will send thousands to their deaths. In each case, there is a moment, brief, almost invisible, where hesitation could have changed history. Julius Caesar stood at the Rubicon, knowing that crossing it would make him an enemy of Rome. He crossed. Napoleon took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. In that instant, he did not just claim authority, he declared himself the source of it. History remembers the battles that followed, but the true story is not political. It is psychological. Because power does not begin in palaces, it begins in the human mind. Long before empires, long before nations, long before written law, the human organism learned a brutal lesson. To be powerless is to be vulnerable. And in a hostile world, vulnerability was often fatal. The hunger for power did not begin with kings. It began with survival. And it has never left us. The tribal blueprint. Before cities, there were tribes moving through unforgiving terrain. Food was uncertain. Winters were brutal. Predators circled at the edge of firelight. Within these tribes, hierarchy emerged quickly, not from cruelty, but from necessity. The strongest defended the group. The most strategic decided when to move. The most dominant settled disputes. High status meant first access to resources, protection in conflict, greater chance of reproduction. Low status meant stress, exposure, instability. Exclusion was not humiliation, it was death. Over thousands of generations, this reality carved itself into human biology. Cortisol rises in those who perceive themselves at the bottom of hierarchy. Testosterone fluctuates with wins and losses. Even posture shifts depending on perceived rank. Status became synonymous with safety. To rise was to reduce vulnerability. To fall was to risk disappearance. Modern society replaced spears with contracts and battlefields with institutions. But the nervous system remains ancient. The executive climbing corporate ranks. The politician consolidating influence. The entrepreneur dominating a market. Different arena, same wiring. The pursuit of power feels urgent because once it was. The chemical throne power is not only structural, it is chemical. When a person rises in status, dopamine reinforces the ascent. Achievement becomes addictive. The brain begins to crave dominance because dominance feels rewarding. Serotonin stabilizes confidence. The body signals composure. Speech slows. Movements become deliberate. Power feels steady. But something subtle shifts beneath the surface. As authority increases, empathy often decreases. Studies show that individuals placed in positions of power interrupt more frequently. They overestimate their accuracy. They become less attuned to emotional nuance. Not because they are cruel, because perception changes. When power rises, the brain prioritizes execution over connection, goals over relationships, outcomes over feelings. Others become roles, subordinates, rivals, assets, obstacles. The higher the rank, the narrower the lens. And when perception narrows, distortion begins. The throne is not just a seat, it is a filter through which reality is viewed. The amplifier. Power is not a creator, it is a magnifier held to the soul. Give a kind man authority, and his generosity expands. Give an insecure man authority, and his fear becomes policy. Give a narcissist authority, and the world becomes a mirror. This is why history feels cyclical. The same traits that make a person capable of rising are often the traits that undo them once they arrive. Caesar did not suddenly become ambitious at the Rubicon. He had always been ambitious. Power simply removed the leash. Napoleon did not become restless after victory. Victory fed the restlessness that was already there. At lower levels, the world pushes back. Critics speak, rivals compete. Consequences are immediate. At the top, resistance thins, and without resistance, personality expands unchecked. Confidence becomes certainty. Certainty becomes arrogance. Arrogance becomes blindness. Power does not whisper to the ego, it shouts. Isolation at the apex. The highest position in any hierarchy is structurally lonely. The more authority one holds, the fewer equals remain. Conversations become strategic. Honesty becomes cautious. Information becomes curated. Advisors protect access. Subordinates protect themselves. Over time, reality itself becomes filtered. Silence begins to feel like agreement. Distance grows between decision and consequence. A decree is signed in comfort. Its cost is paid somewhere far away. Statistics replace faces. Abstraction replaces empathy. And when consequence becomes abstract, restraint weakens. This is how miscalculation is born, not from stupidity, from insulation. Power isolates. Isolation distorts. Distortion collapses. The seduction of control. Control soothes the human mind. The powerless must adapt constantly. The powerful reshape their environment. Uncertainty shrinks. Resistance fades. Outcomes accelerate. For the nervous system, this feels like amplified safety. Over time, authority fuses with identity. Without power, who remains? Attachment forms. An attachment to power breeds fear. Because loss no longer feels professional, it feels existential. The primitive brain interprets status loss as threat to survival. Desperation follows, and desperation exposes character more clearly than success ever could. Power feels like strength. Dependence on power is fragility. The collapse mechanism. History follows a quiet psychological sequence. A leader rises through competence or boldness. Success accumulates. Resistance diminishes. Confidence expands. Then comes excess. An overextended campaign. A reckless expansion. A purge driven by suspicion. A decision no one dared to challenge. The distortion was gradual. Invisible at first, until it reshaped everything. Ambition becomes overreach. Confidence becomes recklessness. Control becomes suffocation. The same traits that built the system begin to fracture it. Power did not change. Amplification did. And amplification without restraint destabilizes every structure it touches. The rare form of power. Yet history offers another model. The individual who possesses power, but is not possessed by it. Marcus Aurelius commanded the greatest military force in the world. Provinces answered to him. Yet in private writings, he reminded himself daily of humility, of patience, of mastery over anger. He understood something rare. External authority is unstable. Internal authority is sovereign. To rule others requires leverage. To rule oneself requires discipline. Anger, pride, greed, fear. These forces have ended more reigns than rebellion ever did. The crown does not eliminate weakness, it reveals it. Sovereignty. There are two hierarchies in every human life. One external, one internal. The external hierarchy measures title, wealth, influence, reach. The internal hierarchy measures restraint, clarity, composure, self-command. The first can be granted and revoked. The second must be built. Civilizations will continue to rise and fall. Thrones will continue to be claimed and lost. But one law remains constant. Power reveals. It reveals ambition. It reveals insecurity. It reveals wisdom. It reveals excess. And the most dangerous individual is not the one who rules others. It is the one who never learned to rule himself. Power is ancient. Power is chemical. Power is seductive. But the highest form of power has never been dominance over the world. It has always been sovereignty over the self. And that is the only empire that does not collapse. We'll meet again in the timeless realm.